Hastings. In this second bonus episode of the Let's Talk Paralegal podcast, I have a very enlightening conversation with attorney Kelli Hastings, also known as the Yoga Lawyer. We talk about the legal professional mindset, why it is so important to manage your mindset, and how you can do so. Listen in for more. Welcome, Kelli, to the Let's Talk Paralegal podcast. As I was saying prior to the recording, and we've had several conversations prior to this episode actually coming to fruition. I love your book, and it was just, it was inspiring. It was educating. It was emotional. Like I told you, it was an emotional roller coaster. But before we get into all that, let's talk about you. Let's talk about who you are, how you got there, how this book came to birth. And because I love how you mixed yoga with lawyers, right? Because like I was saying before, the mindset is very important right now, especially with the legal professionals. And it's home to me because I'm in the middle of writing a book literally about that. Yeah. So let's talk about you. Let's highlight you today. All and right. really, just tell us who you are, tell the audience.
Well, I'm Kelli Hastings, and, I've got kind of the funny nickname, the Yoga Lawyer, which started after my first trip to India. I came back and some of my lawyer partners and colleagues, just to kind of, make fun of me in a fun, joking way, would call me the Yoga Lawyer. And I was like, I kind of like that. So maybe I'll make that my brand. And that's sort of how it evolved. And it started as just a blog I would write about, what ended up becoming my book, which is all about just how do we navigate this world, like being a lawyer, and other people in the legal profession, but all of us, it can be so difficult. And it's very hard to figure out how to incorporate spirituality and exist in a material reality. And, I came up very right brained, or maybe it's left brain, the other way, left brain, where it's, very logical. I majored in mathematics, went to law school, was, workaholic lawyer. And then through personal tragedy, I started getting into yoga and really, to integrate those two things can be a challenge to someone coming from that legal profession. So that is sort of what became my book and my brand. And so now I'm just kind of living the dream, being a yogi and a lawyer and finding and navigating this material reality.
I know. And you were talking about in our prior conversations how you're trying to get away from the whole lawyer thing.
I'm still in it, but it's definitely evolved from
And I feel like sometimes we just need to find where our comfort zone is, right? Because I felt the same way. I was exhausted in the corporate world. I worked 9 to 5, right, quote unquote, because you never work 9 to 5.
Oh, it's always
when trial comes around and you're litigating files, that's just non-existent at that point. And I was a recent mom, and similar to you, had a tragedy, all that good stuff. But I said, I'm done, like I just got to the point where I'm just like, I'm over this. Like, I don't want to work these hours. I don't want people controlling my schedule. Everybody's either lazy and efficient, and it's just, it's bottling me down and it's hindering my family unit. And it's just not worth it to me anymore. Yeah. And I feel like sometimes, we either have to remove ourselves from the situation, find somewhere else where it's more welcoming and warming, or in my case, I was just over it, right? I was just done. And I said, I'm going to do my own thing. I'm not leaving the legal industry, but I'm just going to do it in my own way, in my own path, right? And I think that's where also yoga came into my life stronger, because it was always in my life. My father, which is the one that I told you that passed away almost 8 years now, very spiritual person. He was multilingual, he spoke multiple languages. And he's the one that kind of introduced me about meditation and grounding and stuff like that. So I was introduced to it in a very early age. I just didn't quite understand all of it, right? Because I was young and I wasn't really open to it at that point, because I had a Roman Apostolic Catholic mother. That that said, no, you're going to church every Sunday, you're doing your communion, confirmation, all the good stuff, and you're going to go to church. So it was steered away, right? But then, once I got older, I like you, I was merging all the worlds, right? So I had this trifecta. And I feel like that's why I was so open to your book, because I'm very open-minded because of my parents. My parents were very open-minded, multilingual, multicultural. I grew up in Miami, which is like the melting pot of cultures. Like there's like everybody from everywhere is in this, county. And so I didn't grow up with life so black and white. I knew that there was gray lines that we can draw outside the box. And I didn't realize that wasn't everybody else's world until, funny story, I visited where my husband was raised, which is further up north of Florida. In the sticks, where there is literally just dirt road, no lights. You have to use your headlights, which I had never used in my life because I'm a city girl. My father-in-law, my husband, and not so much my brother-in-law anymore because he became vegan and yogi and stuff. They hunt venison. So the deer heads everywhere, like literally my whole world just went upside down when I went to go visit my in-laws for the first time. So very interesting how, oh wow, okay, I am open-minded, but this is just creepy at this point. And so life tests you, right? I think that's what my point of the story was. Life tests you. You think you know one thing, and then you get introduced to other things and then I feel like when you're well into your late 30s, 40s, 50s, the older you get, I don't think it has anything to do with experience, because a lot of us haven't experienced a lot. I know a lot of people in their older age that have never left the country, or even their state, for that matter. So I don't think it has anything to do with experience or exposure. I think it has to do with your mind, right? Because you can open up a book, you can go on the internet, and you can learn about other things, other ways. Although traveling is my favorite. So
yeah, traveling is yoga.
Nothing compares to like seeing the picture and then actually going to see it, feel it, touch it, and experience it, in full form. So I feel like what I got from the book, because I actually was blessed enough to listen to it. What I got from the book is that you have to be open-minded in order to grow as a person, in order to grow your legal career or any career for that matter. And in order to be a full-formed human, right?
Yeah.
And like I was telling you before, the chapters that really stood out to me were chapters 3 and 4, where you talk about the judgment and you talk about good and evil. Because I feel like that's where, especially in our country, in the States, we get divided, right? With gun violence, with war, with anything, even gas prices at this point. We're just, I mean, like, can we find anything else to dispute at this point? And the verbiage that we use in the legal industry, like I was telling you, disputes, arguments, judgment, like all these strong words that we would normally not, use on a daily basis. We're using them in court, in public forums. And I feel like that also sets the tone, right? Law schools pitting you guys against each other, for competition, for grades. That also sets a very strong tone, because it makes you naturally argumentative, right? That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to make good attorneys. And so they're pitting you against each other, and they're creating that toxic, very strong environment. So what are your thoughts on that? How do you feel like, we can kind of maybe separate these worlds and then unite them again, right? Because I feel like we need to separate them in order to bridge it. But how can we get to that point? Because I feel like your book does a very good job in actually bridging that. So I would love to just hear your thoughts off the page.
Well, yeah. So I think the big thing, and I know I talk about this in the book too, is sort of separating the person from the arguments. And, we need argument. We need to be able to have discourse, maybe is a less strong word. We need to be able to disagree with each other in a nice way without hating the person. And I found myself doing that in court sometimes, where I'm just like getting mad at the defense attorney or the plaintiff's attorney, depending what side I'm on. And it's not even about them. Like, why am I angry? And so what being a good lawyer has taught me, really, because the good lawyers aren't like that. The good lawyers are your friends when you leave the courtroom, and you can work with them, and there's good faith attempts to negotiate. those are the ones that are the real good lawyers. They're not the ones that come in there and bring their own emotions. You can zealously advocate for your client without getting yourself emotionally involved. But it's difficult to do as a human because we do have a hard time separating the people from the arguments. But if we realize through our yogic practice or whatever, there's so many different ways to experience this. If we realize that at our essence, we're really all the same, we're really all one, and that just because someone has committed a bad act or something we would judge as bad doesn't make the person bad, because at the end of the day, we're all of it. We're good, we're bad, we're black, we're white, we're conservative, liberal. And what we do is we create these black or white dualities. And that's why we're so divided, because we say, well, I'm not that. We point at the other person. What we don't realize is if you point it back, there's a part of you that is like that. And if you can integrate that, then you won't be so apt to judge the person outside you. You can still have a discourse, an argument. Let's argue all day, but let me not be mad at you. Let me be open to what you're saying, and you listen to me and I'll listen to you. And when we do that, we realize we have more in common than we have not in common. But it's hard.
It is. It's hard, and it's hard to quiet the noise, right? Because I feel like that's what it is. It's just all noise, right? And it's distraction. Our lives in general are filled with distractions. And I didn't realize how much distraction until this my family and I, for a spring break, we went off to literally the woods in a cabin in Tennessee where there's no service, no Wi-Fi. You have to play DVD. There's no cable. Like if you want to watch a movie, old school DVD, CDs. I think there was a Bluetooth. There was a Bluetooth where you can do the download, songs that you have on your phone. But that's about it. And I welcome that, because
you need that.
That is so chaotic, right? Because running a business, being a mother, doing all the things, you're constantly in distraction mode, right? Oh my God, did I do this? Oh my God, did I pack the lunch? Oh my God, is it dance day? Is it karate day? Oh, like you're always, it's like, it's like reminders here. Even my freaking, what do you call this? The reminders for like your alarms.
Yeah.
Like even that is like, wake up, sweetie. You have to wake up. Like it's so intense. And I'm just like, man, I really got to change my alarm, to like some meditation music where I can wake up calm and not like hyped. I feel like my husband has like this like rocky kind of music, and I'm just like, like I don't want to wake up like that. I used to have an alarm where it would tell me my day, my calendar. And I'm like, it's already stressing me out,
Hear all you have to do.
That's what I mean. It's like life is just about distraction, and I just can't, it's like
right. And that's part of why we're not even conscious of what we're doing, because if we're so distracted, then we have a lot less time we're a lot less apt to be compassionate toward our fellow humans, because we're just in that distraction, immediate response mode. And we do get a little charge out of that emotion of getting angry. And I think that's part of it. When we're distracted, we're not even aware of what's happening in our body. Where if we take some time in the woods or going for a walk or, doing a little yoga practice, so many countless ways to bring yourself back in the present moment. And then you're more aware when you get that little ting of emotion of anger of whatever, and you can really look at it versus just getting swept away in it because you're so distracted by everything.
Yeah, and I think listening is something that we don't do, right? We're always ready to respond. What am I going to say? What do I have to say? What am I going to do? Da, 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 da. Like I'm better than that. I have something better. Da, da, da. Like it's always like, why are you trying to one up people? Like it's not about that. It's about listening, understanding, empathy. It's about trying, especially as a legal professional, these are humans that we are trying to defend, right? Whatever, regardless of whatever side you're on. Really understanding your client's needs on top of the legal matter is really what's going to help you set you apart, right? It's really what's going to establish that relationship that's going to bring you continuous business, that's going to bring you those, 5-star reviews, referrals, whatever it is that you're looking for at that moment. And even if you're not the lawyer, right? Even if you are the legal professional, like most of my listeners are, it sets you apart from the rest of them. When a client says, no, I want that person to work on my case, or every time I speak to them, I just feel comfortable and thank you for hiring them. Like that is what you want, right? That, you know, because if you want to be that go-to person, you want to be, you know, that person in that position, because come time for promotion or come time for, you know, money talk, you know, you want to be in that position where you're like, well, you know what I have to offer, because everybody has no complaints about me and I'm well worth every single penny. And whatever it is, you have that upper hand. And I feel like sometimes we miss the mark on that, you know, and you're never going to get there until you love yourself. I always say you have to give yourself love before others can love you and before you can love others, because you don't know what love is until you love yourself. So spend time with yourself. And I think you say that in the book as well, where you talk about being present and you talk about, you know, just really looking. Like the other day I was walking and I saw these two little butterflies and I recorded it, you know, I was like, they're so cute. They're just these two little butterflies going. And then I caught myself and I'm like, wow, I'm really in my own little world right now, because everybody must be looking at me like I'm crazy. But it was, you know, I showed my daughter because my daughter loves butterflies, and I showed her and she goes, oh my God, Mom, that's so cool. And I was like, okay, so it's not just me.
It's good. It's good to remember, you know, like not just like take moments like that so that you recognize that nature is everywhere. I love it. And it's good for your daughter to see that too, you know,
My daughter's a yogi. I have her in training.
priority. Yeah.
Yes, it's a priority. And that's another thing, right? Setting boundaries, setting priorities, even if like I always talk about this, there's no such thing as a difficult client. It's really understanding your client. Really, why are you reacting to that client in that way? Are they triggering you? Do they remind you of something? Why are they being so needy? Like really get to the actual issue, because like you said, we're all in distraction mode, you know. They're going, obviously they're coming to us because they have an issue, right? Because if not, they wouldn't be there. So I think we forget that, we miss the mark on that too, you know, where it's like, no, they're here because they have a problem. That's what we're trying to do. So being proactive instead of reactive, you know, just little awareness, right, is a big thing as well, especially in yoga.
Totally.
Just being aware of your reactions to things, not meeting them at their level when they're very in that anger mode, and kind of saying, be curious about the interaction. Well, what makes you think that I don't care about your case? Or what are we doing that we can do better? You know, ask those questions, because that way you're like really bringing it to fruition, because maybe you're thinking you're doing everything possible, but we don't all speak the same language, right? Like maybe they want a weekly email. So set up a template, and send them that weekly email. Maybe they want it through a text. Maybe they want a phone call because they prefer the old fashioned way where they want to talk to a human. Whatever it is, find their language. And these are things that you need to be doing from the time that they walk in as a client, right? From the time that they're signing that retainer and that agreement between the law firm and you. And I feel like sometimes we forget that, you know, we're here to serve people as legal professionals. We're here to serve people as humans. Let's do that, right? Let's serve people.
Take a step back and recognize what's really happening. Because, you know, at the most physical level, we're working their case. If it's a, you know, disability case or something, people can be very emotional about it. So if you take a step back and see what's really going on, you can have a broader perspective, and just rather than getting just all caught up in the details of what we need to file and this guy's calling me all the time. I mean, I've had those clients that they call all the time, but you have to remember that this is their whole life, where we see, you know, maybe hundreds of those type of cases. It's like so important to them. So just being there, being a presence and listening can really make the difference for them, where they feel heard. Even though it might not change the outcome of the case in any way, you're helping a human. And in that way, you're like a healer in a lot of ways. People come to the lawyers and their legal staff for real help with a human problem. And they can feel that healing, even though it's, you know, in the context of usually trying to get some kind of monetary recovery. There's more going on. And if we can take a step back and see the bigger picture and deal with our own triggers, because I know it can get annoying when you're dealing with with problematic clients, but just, remembering what they're going through and being compassionate. And that can really, that translates, your clients see that and they really appreciate that at the end of the day, even if maybe they don't say it.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
There's no I in team. You guys have to work together, know each other, know your triggers, know why this person is reacting that certain way. Culture is another thing, right? So if you're multilingual and English is not your main language, that can also be, something that can really interfere with communication and interactions day to day. I know Hispanics and Caribbean in general, we tend to be very loud, right? And very expressive. And we love to hug and kiss and just be very affectionate. And we're all up in your face. And for some people, that's very off-putting, right? And very scary and creepy. And they're like, don't touch me, personal space, right? So understanding that, right? Understanding that there is a cultural difference, personality, introvert, extrovert, ambivert, whatever it is, understanding that that is present, that we bring in. You cannot separate your personal life and your professional because that is one. You are one. You are going to be the same, understanding who we are as a person. Like we don't get that. We don't get that training.
No, we don't. It's not taught in schools, sadly. It's easier to kind of blame outside of ourselves, like that guy's just annoying versus going, well, why is he triggering me? Because the same person doesn't strike my other colleague the same way. Why do we all have different levels of annoyance? And it's because it comes from inside, it's not from outside. It's very subjective.
It really is. And it's just really hard to balance that, right? And to really have that tough love talk to yourself, because I opened up my business. I'll never forget this interview, and it wasn't because it was a good interview. I get on the interview and they're like, how would you like me to introduce you? And I was like, Etta Rosa, founder of Etta Rosa LLC, will be just fine. And they're like, well, do you want like mompreneur or womanpreneur or boss lady or this? And then they start putting all these labels on. And I'm just like, no, my name and my business will be just fine. I can introduce, clearly I'm a female, so they'll realize I'm a female eventually. Most of my audience already knows I'm a mom. So it's like, I don't really need to, that doesn't have to be the first thing, right? Let me be me first. And that's kind of like my whole gist, right? I wake up as myself first, and then as the mom, the entrepreneur, colleague, and everything else, because you lose yourself, especially as a parent. You lose yourself in the process.
Yeah.
People pleasing, perfectionism, you name it. I was all of that.
I've been there, sister. That's me too.
Oh, girl. Okay, so let's go back to chapter 4, because it talks about the human and the action. And I feel like that has a lot to do with what we were just talking about, right? That was a great, long introduction to that chapter. So really break that chapter down without giving all the details, but really give us the theory of that chapter, because for me, that was just
that was the good and evil one where I talk about Hitler. And yes, so that basically we like to create bad guys in our lives, demons, evildoers. We like to have a story of heroes and villains. So we almost need these counterparts. For some people, it's whatever, it's Trump or it's Biden, or if you're in America, pick your flavor. But Hitler's a good one because everybody hates him, and he's done horrible things. So my point was, and this, maybe loses a few folks, but I had seen this picture on the internet of Hitler looking really sweet, holding hands with his little niece, looking very fatherly or unclely, whatever the word is. And it blew the internet's mind. All the comments on it were like, what? I thought he was horrible. And I'm like, you got to remember that he didn't think he was horrible. And, whether you're one side or the other in America, for instance, with how divided politics are, whoever you're against doesn't think they're horrible. Whoever your villain is, nobody thinks of themselves that way. They think they're doing the right thing. So if you can remember that, and that doesn't mean we excuse bad actions. We have certain laws and standards, and people should be accountable for their actions. And sometimes punishment, is necessary, or a lot of times maybe even it is, but that doesn't mean that we condemn the person. We can condemn the bad acts while holding space that person is another human that is both divine and diabolical, like we all are. And we tend to do that. We tend to demonize when we haven't integrated our own shadow, our own, evil inside, because we all are both. That's what the material reality is. It's this dualism. And so that chapter was sort of about how good and evil are subjective. Another example I gave is like in India, my travels led me there, about how they wouldn't eat cow, like that would be awful. And in America, we're fine with that. But if you talk about eating a horse or a dog, we're like, no, no. But then in other countries, they do that. So it's like, well, what is good and what's evil? If it's considered evil to do something in one culture, it might not be in another. Like you were saying about cultural differences before with, a lot of Latin Americans, just the way their culture is, and India is the same way. There's, differences, and America has its own culture. And a lot of good and evil is defined in a cultural way versus, real objective truth.
And it has a lot to do with society, right? Societal norms, in the environment that you were raised in. What beautiful thing about America that I love, and the reason why I stay in this country, is it welcomes, well, I guess depending again on your political side, immigrants. Right. We're the land of the immigrants, quite literally. It's part of our foundation. And I love that. I love that, however they get here, I'm not going there. We're not going there, guys. But, it's really nice to see people from other countries come here, build businesses, really invest in the economy and really watch the economy flourish with knowledge from other countries. I feel like, again, you said they demonize that, right? Because of the media and everything else. And again, in Miami, where it's very Cubanized, right? To say the least. But what people don't understand is that the first Cubans that actually landed in Miami were very wealthy and own businesses, and were very educated. Cuba has one of the best education systems in the world, especially for medicine. A lot of people go over there to learn medicine because of their programs. So most of the original Cubans, the ones that actually established what is now known as Miami, were very wealthy, very educated immigrants. And a lot of people don't realize. It goes to your point, and I'm trying to, paint that picture to everyone, is like, educate yourself, learn everything about the subject. And then, like my father always told me, make an educated opinion, right? Because at the end of the day, it's still an opinion, but it's educated.
Yeah, have your opinion, but maybe also have some space in there that even that well-educated opinion might be not the total picture.
Yeah.
Because there's always judgments in general can get us into trouble. That's what happens. We walk around, we've kind of decided everything already, and then we're not as open to different things. That's really interesting about the first Cuban immigrants. I'm sure that's something that a lot of people hadn't ever thought about or realized, because we have our own judgments about what an immigrant looks like.
Yeah. So I always like to share that story. I did a whole project on it in high school because, well, personal. I'm not Cuban, I'm Puerto Rican, but appreciate what they have to offer within those differences, right? You're not always going to agree 100%, but my grandparents and I are very opposite when it comes to politics and societal views. And it's okay. We have very passionate conversations. And I end up saying, okay, abuelo, whatever you say. My abuela has passed 3 years now. But yeah, I still have him, and I'll be like, okay, that's fine. Yes, if that's what that's fine. That's usually how I end the conversation. He's like, you're not listening. I'm like, okay. But it proves my point, right? That you can still be in the complete opposite, and I'm talking about complete opposite of the spectrum, and still meet halfway, in certain things.
And love the person, and passion for the person, because they're not their beliefs. Their beliefs have just been placed upon the person the same way ours have. We're not our beliefs. So if we can remember that, then we're not so apt to always fight.
I also love what you said about judgment and your view about judgment and how we view judgment, right? And it was chapter 3, I believe. And really, like, I wanted to explore a little bit more about that, because for those of you that haven't read the book, which you should, it's a little cliffhanger at the end. So here I am hanging on, waiting other book to come, but you do explore that a lot differently than well, I would say a typical lawyer would too, right? Because you're not at that typical lawyer mindset, so you're looking at it from a different perspective as far as judgment goes. So really explain to the audience what I'm talking about if they haven't read the book yet.
Yeah, I mean, so judgments are sort of what kind of limit our reality. Like we have preconceived notions about something based on our upbringing and our life experience and, where and when we were born and what culture we're born into. And that's okay, because judgment in a lot of ways is what helps us become co-creators of our reality. It's what separates us from animals. And I give some examples, biblical references to like Adam and Eve and the prodigal son, and kind of
That was amazing, by the way. That was great. I loved it. I loved how you did that.
Well, I don't need to go in depth in all that there, but just that this theory of judgment, maybe that's what makes us human in a lot of ways, that we can decide I like this better than that, so I'm going to pick this shirt to wear over this one. Where it's not like you watch your animals, like your dog, they're not, maybe they like one food better than another, but they're not capable of judging in the same way. But that, with that power that comes from that, as Spider-Man would say, comes great responsibility, which is we get so limited by our judgments, because as we get older, it becomes even more apparent how, a lot of times you see older individuals that are hard to go back and question their beliefs. So it's okay to judge reality and co-create our reality in that way, but we have to also have room for possibilities, leave space that our judgments may not be completely accurate, that what we've decided about someone may not be true. And this comes back to what we were saying before about distraction and awareness, because if you're living in the present moment, then you're more apt to see when you just have a snap judgment or any judgment at all. And you can choose to relinquish judgment in situations. And when you're living in the present, you really are living without judgment, because you're not judging reality, you're just observing it. And doing those type of practices, like walking in nature, meditating, whatever you like to do to get you in the moment, can help you to relinquish some of that judgment, which is a gift, but also a curse in a lot of ways, because it's what limits us. It limits our viewpoints. It makes it so that we can't really see all the possibilities in front of us, because we've judged that reality down to a minute thing that it's much bigger than.
Yeah, no, and I love it. I love how you did that. And I love the Adam and Eve reference, because obviously as a Roman Apostolic, Catholic, we've read that story quite often in different variations as well. And so I loved how you tied that into it. And please, guys, read the book. It's amazing. And so I wanted to leave with this, because I know we're getting close to the recording.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I wanted to leave off the audience with this, and it's all about this conversation. I know some of you may not resonate with yoga, may not know what we're talking about when it comes to grounding and awareness, but one simple thing that I used to do before I was even introduced to yoga, or immersed, I should say, in yoga, was when I was getting heated, because Latin blood, red hair, get it? And somebody was being very aggressive towards me, I was easy to snap back. I was easy to be like, you're not going to step over me, just because I grew up in a very male dominated industry, the legal industry back in the 90s and early 2000s. Very rare you would see a female lawyer at the top, right? Or at all, actually, because all my attorneys that I worked for like the first 5 years of my career were male.
Yeah.
And directors and supervisors, I'd be in a room filled with men, taking the minutes and stuff of the meeting. And my father did tell me that. He's like, get ready, you're going to be walking in a man's world. And so I was prepared for that. But he said, remember, I never disrespected you. Don't let anybody else disrespect you, regardless of their gender or their statute. And, that really stood with me. But then I took it to like the umph degree, right? I took it to the next level, like, like
that was the same way.
I was angry all the time. I was a hothead. I was definitely a hothead. And then later on, I said, this is not serving me, and it's not serving others. I realized the damage that I had done throughout the years by my actions and my reactions. And so a simple thing that has a little bit to do with yoga, because we do breath work in yoga. but it's just taking a deep breath, you know,
Mhm.
putting the person on hold if they're on the phone will reset. I think it takes 30 seconds for your mind to like reset when there's like a pause and a silence. So putting them on hold, you know, excusing yourself from the room, you know, little things like that to remove yourself from that toxicity and that chaotic interaction if you know you won't be able to control yourself. Um,
Absolutely.
were little steps that I took and still do sometimes because you know it's all about practice, right? It's the practice of yoga, and
Yeah.
that word practice is very prominent, you know, practice of law. You know, we're still practicing, right? Unfortunately, I know some people may get terrified by that comment, but we are still practice, right? Laws evolve, rules evolve, change, maneuver. We know this, Supreme Court justices and all that stuff. It just really depends on society, right? And their, I guess, their not beliefs, their vision. And so same goes for the interactions in our daily lives, whether it's professional or personal. And I feel like your book does that, you know, it does a very good marrying of those two. And you do talk a lot about your personal journey, which obviously, you know, something has to trigger it, right? It has to come from somewhere. Unfortunately, not really the best thing to be, you know, going through. But I guess a lot of good came out of it. But definitely resonated with me. I cried, I laughed, all the emotions. And I just can't thank you enough for giving me that opportunity and for being on the podcast, because this podcast, even though it's about legal education, empowering legal professionals, and really having them have a takeaway. I feel like mindset is the most important takeaway ever, especially for legal professionals. And I thank you for that, for really integrating those two together, because it's so important, especially now.
I agree. Thank you. Thanks for having me on. It's been a pleasure.
Oh, you too. All right, guys, that's it. And until next time, until justice is served, I'll be here.